Next is Team Vaishnavi.
Ma'am, we are ready actually.
Yes,
Acha,
ma'am.
okay.
Everyone.
Vaishnavi
Yes,
will.
ma'am. We are
Okay.
ready, ma'am.
All right. Vaishnavi, I'm sorry. We'll just wait a little more for your presentation. Just let us finish them up, and then we will come to your. Okay, Team Ashutosh, please begin.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Akanksha and my team, students of political science, going to present the word by the glory of Athens, Plato, that is the Republic, which means justice in Greek. We will present our whole presentation in the form of play. So the several characters are Socrates, the narrator of the book, Glaucon, brother of Plato, Adimantus, another brother of Plato, Glaucon, Cephalus, a wealthy businessman and head of the family, Polymarchus, son of Cephalus, and Thrasymachus, a philosopher and sophist. Now, welcome to the Republic of Plato. The work begins with the celebration of festival Bendis in the city of Piraeus, the Athens harbor, where Socrates, along with Glaucon, was invited by Polymarchus at his house. Along with Polymarchus, they meet Adimantus and Thrasymachus as well. However, they went to Cephalus, where the fundamental idea of this book starts by the question of Socrates about the hardship of his old days. But Cephalus replied that the old days brings peace from appetites and passions, and is not much harder to bear than youth. Then Socrates said that you may bear old days well, not because of the way you live, but because you are wealthy. And from here, the discourse starts with the book one, which deals that what the justice is.
Wealth enables one to live a just life, since a wealthy man does not need to fear owing money or and have enough to sacrifice to gods.
Sir, can we say that doing right is just speaking truth and paying back what is owed? For instance, if a friend loans us a weapon but then becomes insane and asks for it back, ought we not to return the weapon? Surely this is not a right action.
Yeah, I agree to you, Socrates.
But I disagree with you, Socrates, as Simonide had said that it is just to give each what is owed to him and do good to friends and harm to enemies.
You are right, Polymarchus, but we don't really know who is actually a friend or an enemy. So, in order to prevent harming friends, we shouldn't cause harm to anyone, as we all know that causing harm to anyone is the function of an unjust man.
I believe that justice is nothing more than what gives advantage to the stronger.
No, as we all know that crafts rule over and are stronger than the things which they are crafts of. As medicine rule over the body, horse breeding over the horse, a captain over his sailors. No knowledge seeks what is advantageous to itself, it seeks what is best for the weaker object that is subject to it. A ruler who is strong in itself seeks what is beneficial for his subjects.
Socrates, a just man always gets less than an unjust man. Justice benefits the stronger. Tyrants, the most unjust, are the happiest and the richest because of their tyranny. Men oppose injustice because they are afraid of being harmed by it.
No, Thrasymachus, a just man is the possessor of virtue, and knowledge and the possession of this makes the just man have more than the unjust. And when it comes to the ruler in various professions like a doctor and his patients does what is best for his subjects and is given wages. Good men rule out of fear of having a bad ruler forced upon them, and because they are just in nature, so they do not harm others.
Socrates, injustice is not only more profitable, but that injustice is virtuous and wise.
It is ignorant man who thinks he knows better than the doctor, the non-musical person who thinks he knows more than the musician. Even thieves have a degree of just behavior, as they would always rob each other. Hence, injustice is neither profitable nor virtuous or wise. The specific function of the soul is virtue, and it can't perform that function without its accompanying virtue of justice. A person with a bad soul will rule poorly, while one with a good soul will rule well. Consequently, the just man is happy, the unjust unhappy. Justice is always inferior and less profitable than justice, since injustice creates misery. Although I know that justice is wisdom or virtue, I still do not know what justice is.
Now, we are going to present book 2 and we try to present the poetry of justice at city level.
Men make laws, and what the laws require, they call just. The origin of justice is a compromise between right and wrong. People value justice because they lack the power to do injustice. It is like an agreement between people. Justice is practiced only by compulsion and not for the good of others, since injustice is more rewarding than justice.
It is merely the appearance of justice that is praised. An unjust person who has a reputation for justice leads a life of pleasure. The gods perceive truth and punish the unjust, but gods can be persuaded by prayers and sacrifices purchased by the unjust who have profited from their crimes.
Socrates described what justice and injustice is doing themselves, how justice benefits those who have justice and how injustice harms them.
I propose first to examine the justice of the city, because it is easier to determine what is just for the group than for the individual. A city, that is the Calipolis, needs people, food, shelter, and goods, with each person specializing in a particular occupation. The city needs merchants to trade with other cities, a marketplace, currency, local retailers, and people who perform menial labor for a wage. Luxury goods and services require a larger city, which leads to war to require more land. War requires an army, and soldiers require special skills. So there is a requirement of soldiers or guardians. A guardian needs to be gentle to his own people, but harsh to others. Therefore, the guardian must be a lover of learning, a philosopher, educated from childhood in music and poetry, then given physical training. Poets like Hesiod and Homer tell inappropriate stories about gods committing impious action, stories which might influence the citizens to act badly. Therefore, the city must only use stories with depicting good behavior so as to influence the citizens of the city in positive ways.
Continuing to book 2, in book 3 we will try to present what should be the nature of the guardian in the state.
Poets should include heroic stories and not include such passages that may cause children to fear death or the afterlife. Since guardians would fear slavery more than death, Admetus, you tell me, can anyone be courageous who has fear of death in him?
No, Socrates.
Yes, and one other thing that, which is no one should lie, but ruler may be lie if required. Moderation in sex, food, and drink are required. Above all, gods and heroes should not be shown engaging in anything unflattering.
Socrates, what would you like to say about the stories for the children?
Yeah, Glucon. Actually, poets currently talk about the success of unjust man. But the stories should be in simple form in which no one evil character should be present. Dramatic style is forbidden. Children should only be exposed to the goods and heroes. Sexual contact between the man and boys is forbidden. The future guardians will be trained for the war. Their diet will be simple and moderate. And those who are suffering from an incurable disease should be allowed to die. The ruler must be a man of experience and virtue. The guardians must be carefully tested to determine those most suited to rule, for whom state must be first. Only the best are to be called guardians, and rest are the warrior or auxiliaries. And one other thing that we will tell a novel to the citizens of ideal city that they have born in the soil of this city, so they must be respect their motherland and they should consider every citizen as their brother. As God has created many categories of metal like gold, silver, bronze, and iron, similarly He has created many categories of man like ruler, soldiers, auxiliaries, or farmers. The man will be classified into these categories as per their inner qualities rather than their birth. And the guardians and warriors are responsible for the defense of the city. The guardians must have not any personal thing beyond what is necessary. Their all needs shall be provided by the state.
Now we are going to present book 4. In this book, we are going to present the question as to why this is the ideal way to live for the guardians and Socrates' classification of soul.
But Socrates, guardians have a very hard life regardless of pleasure and comfort, which would make them unhappy and flourishing.
My dear Adventus, the goal of the city is not to make one group happy at the expense of another. Hence, the guardian will have to give up some goods for the good of the city and must ensure the residents of the city live neither in extreme wealth nor in poverty. Otherwise, it will lead to corruption in either laziness or rebellion.
But Socrates, I am worried that what will happen if the Calipolis have no wealth, but the enemy state has enough during the war.
No need to worry, Adventus. Actually, wisdom is more powerful than wealth. Our education system has 4 virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. This will protect the Calipolis from enemies.
Socrates, can you tell something about the principles of the soul?
Yeah, look on, I was coming on that. Actually, soul has principles, rational and appetite. Where rational follows truth and honor, however, appetite follows the pleasure and satisfaction. In a just person, the rational part will rule the other, which should be followed in Calipolis.
Now we are going to present book 5. In this book, we are going to present why causes and children to be held in groups and is the ideal city possible.
Socrates, what do you mean about the position of wives and children?
Yes, I support your question, Admetus.
I also support your question, Admetus.
Actually, guardians would hold all women and children in common, as they have no private property. Similarly, they have no private family and children. And second thing, that both men and women guardians will perform the same tasks. Thus, they must receive the same education and training.
Is it even possible to build an ideal city?
Yes, Glocken, it is possible, but only in one condition, when philosophers become kings in our states.
But Socrates, what do you mean by philosopher?
Actually, there are two types of philosophers. First, those pseudo-intellectual, whom I call the lover of sight and sound, and second, true philosopher, whom seek the real, unchanging knowledge and of truth in the forms, the ideal abstracts, ideas of truth, beauty and justice, and other concepts, which we experience only in pale copies of the ideal form. The philosopher alone has knowledge of the idea of absolute beauty or the idea of absolute truth. That is the forms. I am talking about second type of philosopher.
Now we are going to present book 6. In this book, we are going to present the ideal form of good and how to perceive that.
I believe that a philosopher is best suited to rule because he, a lover of learning the truth, and is disinclined to attend to physical pleasures.
You are right, Socrates, but most people think that philosophers are vicious cranks and a few good ones are useless to society.
No, Adimantus, I do not concur with you. This view is the result of the fault in the society, not the philosophers, as we all know that a truly good man can't function well in a bad society. I don't like sophists. They are paid tutors who teach conventional wisdom without considering whether it is true or not and call what is pleasant good without really considering the truth of the matter. I strongly believe that the philosopher king must be intelligent, reliable, and willing to lead a simple life. These qualities are rarely found in one person and must be encouraged by education and the study of the good. Just as visible objects must be illuminated in order to be seen, so objects of knowledge must be true. Just as light comes from the sun, similarly, truth comes from goodness. Goodness as the source of truth makes it possible for the mind to know, just as light from the sun makes eyes able to see. Think of a straight line divided into 4 sections or stages. The lowest stage on the line is imagination. The next stage is belief, which deals with physical objects rather than reflections or images of them. Thought uses the forms, but it also relies on images, sense data, and hypothesis. The philosopher progresses through all 4 stages on the line until he reaches understanding. Only the philosopher reaches the last stage, where he understands the form of the good.
Now we are going to present book 7. In this book, we are going to present Plato's very famous illustration, that is, the allegory of the cave.
Imagine there is a cave. All the people in the cave can see only the wall of the cave. Behind them, there is a wall. Behind the wall, there are puppet showmen who are behind the prisoners holding up puppets that cast shadows on the wall of the cave. The prisoners are unable to see these puppets, the real objects that passes behind them. When the prisoners see and hear the shadows and echoes cast by the objects that they do not see, such prisoners would mistake appearance for reality. They would think the things they see on the wall, which are the shadows, were real. They would know nothing of the real causes of the shadows.
This is a weird story, Socrates.
Indeed, Glaucon, it is, but now pay attention to it. One day a prisoner escapes from over the wall. The prisoner sees the objects from the light of the sun and found that the objects the prisoner saw was the real version of the shadows which the prisoner usually had seen of those objects. The prisoner is dragged out of the cave. At first, he is so dazzled by the light up that he can only look at the shadows, then at reflections, then finally at the real objects, real trees, flowers, houses, and so on. He sees that these are even more real than the statues were, and that those were only copies of these. He has now reached the cognitive stage of thought. He has got his first glimpse of the most real things, the forms. When the prisoner's eyes got adjusted to the brightness, the prisoner will turn its eyes towards the heavens and will see the sun. The prisoner understands that the sun is the cause of everything he sees around him. The light, his capacity for sight, the existence of flowers, trees, and other objects. The sun represents the form of the good, and the forward prisoner has reached at the stage of the understanding. Education is the process of turning the soul around and enticing people people to look into the right place for knowledge. The philosopher must be taught to recognize the form of goodness. Then he must return to the cave, that is the world of belief, in order to teach others. The philosopher king with all the other children studies music and poetry. At 18, the best students are chosen for advanced classes in physical training and warfare for several years. At 20, the best are again selected for more education as future guardians. The rest will become the warriors. The future guardians will study mathematics, logic, and dialectic with the goal of reaching truth, not arguing for the sake of arguing. Only the right sort of people at about 30 should be taught dialectic. Then they must spend 15 years in the real world of politics from the age of 35 to 50.
Now we are going to present the forms of government in the city along with the nature of man in these governments.
Socrates, you were about to discuss the 4 types of government and about citizens whose nature is equivalent to the nature of this government. Please explain.
Sure, Glycon. I will discuss 4 unjust constitution of city and man. The 4 types of government, timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. All are failures, a gradual failure of the city as it passes through its government. Because the city is human, it is imperfect and thus destined to fail. The future leaders are chosen based on human perceptions. Eventually, errors in selecting future guardians will result in someone who is not fit to rule being selected. Rulers selected in error will desire property. Eventually, the rulers will own all the property. They will emphasize military training in order to control the others. This will lead to timocracy. Leaders will be chosen not for wisdom, but for their abilities in war. The timocratic man's soul is controlled not by reason, but by his spirit. In an oligarchy, all the political power is in the hands of the wealthy. The wealthy and the poor are at war with each other. So that there are really 2 cities. The oligarchic man is motivated only by his greed. Eventually, the oligarchy increases poverty until the poor rebel.
What will happen after the rebellion?
When the poor rebel against the wealthy, minority of the city becomes a democracy. In a democratic city, no one is forced to take public office, no one enforces law, and no one serves in the military. Eventually, a leader rises because he panders to the people. As his popularity rises, so does his power. Eventually, those who lost wealth start a civil war. The democratic man moves from momentary whim without consideration or order in his life and thus accomplishes little.
Coming on book 9, representing the nature of tyrant and the state of tyranny.
The tyrant cannot control his desires and indulge himself in pleasure and shameful activities. He wishes to fulfill his all appetites and passions. As a slave to his appetites and passion, he sees all relationship in the form of master and slave. He sees enemies everywhere. The just man is happier than the tyrant because he governs his appetites and his reason, and hence true knowledge are in control. As soul has 3 parts, men are also of 3 types. The just man that governed by reason and seeks knowledge, the democratic man that governed by his spirit and seeks honor, and the 3rd type that governed by his desires, seeks profit and satisfaction. The 3rd one is the happiest among all and is a combination of the democratic, the oligarchic, and the tyrant. The man who has experienced all 3 forms of pleasure of knowledge is found to be the best because he knows that other pleasures are either illusory or physical and do not last for long. The objects of knowledge are ideas and hence true and real. The unjust man makes his life miserable by ignoring reason. In order to feed his appetites, he starves his most important, most human aspect, that reason. A man who wants to live a happy life must be led by reason. If his own reason is not enough to guide him, he must be led by reason of others, and as the producer are led by philosopher kings.
At last, we would present book 10, which deals with the limitation of artists and the reason behind why tyrant can't destroy soul and reward for just.
Artists seem to create things, but they only make poor copies of the ideas. Artists imitate the specifies, but not universal and ideal. An artist who paints a picture of a bed only makes a copy of the idea or form of a bed. The painter copies are based on ideal things or forms. The painter's knowledge is less than that of the person who wants to use the things he paints. Imitative poets must be banned from the city because they tend to tell immoral stories and falsehoods. A just life's chief reward comes in after the life.
If Socrates believed the soul lives on after the body,
the soul cannot be destroyed by its particular evil. as other things are. Since death does not make one more unjust, death is not an error, so it cannot destroy the soul. The soul is then immortal. The God know everything. They won't leave the just man unrewarded. There is a myth about a soldier named Ar who is on the funeral pyre, and when he comes back to life, describing about his afterlife, Ar says that his soul and others traveled to a place where there were two plasmas in the earth and two above the sky, and judges sat in between the plasmas. Just souls were sent to heaven, while unjust went to plasmas in the earth. Souls from earth were dirty and worldly, but those from sky were brightening and shining. And earth learned that souls in heaven are happy while those in the earth suffer for their crimes for 1,000 years.
To conclude, we get from the above discourse that their main focus was to derive an analogous concept of individual justice. In Book 2, 3, and 4, Plato identifies political justice as harmony in a structural political body. However, at the end of Book 4, Plato tries to show that individual justice mirrors political justice. Book 5 through Book 7 focused on the rulers as the philosopher king. In Book 9, he presents three arguments for the conclusion that it is desirable to be just. But we must notice that none of these arguments actually proven that justice is desirable apart from its consequences. Instead, they establish that justice is always accompanied by true pleasure. This book is the most anti-democratic book ever written. However, in all probability, none of this is actually supposed to serve as the main reason why justice is desirable. Ultimately, Plato ends the Republic on a surprising note and claimed that its soul must choose its next life. Now we are giving rest to our words with thanking you from the bottom of our heart, ma'am, for providing us such a marvelous topic for presentation, and would like to extend our gratitude towards our colleagues as well for being the part of our presentation.